You know, everybody has a story, but this morning's guest has over 14 years of local stories. Who is she? You'll meet her coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Reflections Assisted Living Facility across the way from Carolina Forest Elementary School here in Carolina Forest, right behind Horry County State Bank. We're focused on the founding of the Myrtle Beach Herald, and we're visiting with its founder, former owner and publisher, Debbie Harwell. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning to you, Greg.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Oh, thank you. It's just an honor to be here.
The eve of Valentine's Day. I hope you got some big plans tomorrow.
I have plans. Don't know if my husband does, but I have plans.
He'll come around.
He's a sweetie, so I'm not worried about him.
Absolutely. He will come around, and we are ultimately blessed to have copies of the first edition here of the paper.
I was so excited to see these. I haven't seen these in a long time. And I was telling you that it's just so exciting to look at it back in, let's see, this one was published in April 21st, 1994. And I know, I think we were incorporated in 1993. And
you set up the company in 93.
I think so. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, the planning went on for quite some time before the newspaper came about. But it's just exciting to look through it and see the different ideas that it reminded me of what I wanted it to be. And
sure. And of course, to think about, you tried to come up with a little plot summary for me, a little history of the paper, and to read that and then to actually pull it out and to see what you were writing about matching with what actually came out.
I had forgotten about so many things in the Myrtle Beach Herald. One of the front page stories here is a girl that actually went missing, and her mom and dad came to see us, and they wanted to know what they could do to help, you know, what we could do.
Right.
And, you know, could we put in the paper? Could we do this? We ended up doing everything. And I think that's why we were successful in the very beginning, because we were part of the community. And we got involved. We made sure that we even called the police department. We called around the country to find where we could find dogs to make sure where they could go look. I mean, we tried to help everybody. As much as we could.
Of course, you would have done that with or without the paper. I mean, obviously, you all would have, but utilizing the paper was a great
We utilized
vehicle.
the paper for all types of things like that. And I noticed over here, forgotten about this one, Listening to Light by Landis Elvington. She wrote a column for years.
And she was a local gal.
She's a local, and she was in my Sunday school class at church.
Oh, you're kidding, yeah.
And Landis, she could always write, and she just wrote beautifully. And so she just had a good message to tell. And Landis always wanted to write a book, but she never had time to write the book.
Right.
And so I said, Landis, why don't you write a column in the paper? And every column becomes a chapter in your book. Mm-hmm. That's how she made herself write her book, Listening to Light.
That's tremendous.
Because she knew she had a deadline every week.
Right.
And so she made that deadline. It was a religious column.
Right.
It always had some type of moral message to it, and everybody loved Landis's column. It went on for years and years. And I see Susan Grissom-Means actually was writing the community chatter, and I loved it because Susan knew everything that was going on.
Yeah. And there was some great profile. There was actually a profile about her early on. I saw you had not only a profile of Skeeter Nash and all, but also a Gatlin brother right out of the first gate. And I think I saw you had did you have a salesman named Skeeter? No relation.
No relation there. Yeah. Skeeter Nash was our very first Friends in Focus. Every week we took one person from the community and wrote a Friends in Focus feature on them. And so we went up to Skeeter's breakfast house, and the Gatlin brothers' mother and father was sitting there with us at breakfast. And I knew then I was going to love this newspaper and what I could do. And it just got better, just week after week. And I started writing a column called Publisher's Puff. And it was kind of the things that I was doing in my personal life, and it got to be a lot of fun. And it was interesting how people get to know you through your column, I would see them out. Dale Earnhardt's son, he was out at the racetrack.
He was right there. Frank Barnhill, your first staff writer, got a shot of him. And I'm sorry viewers can't see what we're seeing here. It's pretty amazing to think, obviously, of all the pieces here. We'll have to make sure and open this up. If folks ever want to stop by, they can stop by the Herald's office or call the same number you had forever, 626-1330. 3131. You got it. That's right.
But another one of the things that we did, we thought, how can we get people to read the newspaper? And we thought, children. That's how. And the sports, the local sports in the schools never seemed like they got enough coverage. So we made sure to send somebody out to all the schools, have baseball of the children, have all the children's sports in here. So we had a pretty elaborate sports section going on in the newspaper.
Even out of the gate, Debbie. That's amazing. And a lot of great pictures here, Myrtle Beach Herald Society. Who was doing that for you? Was Charlene yet on board? Or that was just Debbie taking pictures,
We took pictures. Everybody had a camera, so we took pictures everywhere.
Page 6.
If we were there, we took pictures, and it was in the paper everywhere.
That is hilarious.
But it was so much fun in the very beginning. The building and the trying to figure out. We wanted it to be a family-oriented paper. And so we kept to that. And during the years, there were a lot of the topless clubs and things that came in and wanted to advertise, but we turned those down, and we always kept the advertising even to what we thought would meet the family standards.
Oh yeah, very definitely. I think that's been carried on. That carried on later when you sold the paper, and then of course when you bought it back, and then when you sold it again. I think you mentioned, I was fascinated to hear that there had been a number of folks that had approached you over the years to sell it, but they may not have had the local. What prompted you to make sure that you were always selling to locals, or and keeping the tradition alive there?
Well, we had a lot of things happen in the beginning. The paper grew quickly.
Right.
We started the newspaper in my house.
Oh, come on.
We had an office that was about 20 feet long. We had computers up against the entire wall.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun. But, I had reporters sleeping on the couch.
Oh, wow.
I had the salespeople coming in and out during the night. And the family was walking around in their house clothes. So finally, after about 4 or 5 months, we had to move out and get an office.
Wow. Debbie.
So we moved over to Farlow Street for a number of years.
Oh, good.
And
behind the convention center.
Behind the convention center in Myrtle Beach, and it kept growing. It kept growing quickly, and it needed cash infusion, a lot of cash infusion to get to catch up. We needed newspaper racks. We needed more salespeople.
Oh, yeah.
We needed, we had a lot of pages, but it was, but not many people working, and we were working all night long, many nights. And so I knew then that if it was going to continue on, it had to have some cash infusion. It had to have somebody run it with more staff. So we had an offer come in to the newspaper. It was a group that was from out of state, and we checked their references instead of them checking our references.
Good for you, yeah.
And it wasn't the type of company that we wanted to sell to. And it wasn't, they didn't seem to have the same family values that we had. They did not have the direction that we wanted to be in. We wanted this paper to be owned by the community. So I went out, found the 9 largest businesses in Myrtle Beach, and I said, how about the community owning this paper? And they all took 10%. So 10 of us ran the newspaper for the next couple of years. But
is that right?
But in taking what we didn't realize, in taking the 10 largest businesses, or the 9 largest businesses and myself, that they wanted to grow quickly. They wanted to be big, and they wanted to be big fast. That's not how a newspaper grows.
No.
And so I ended up buying the newspaper back again. And sorting it back out, getting it back into being more the family newspaper once again. Straightening out some of the kinks. And I thought, okay, I know the type of person that could run this newspaper, but you've got to get some of the expenses down. And so one day, a young man came into my office and said, I'd like to talk to you. And and I think that young man was you,
Oh,
Greg
my
Everett.
God, don't put me on the spot, Debbie. Yeah, I like the young man approach. We can keep talking about young men.
But I remember we walked down to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Talked about the newspaper, and you said that you wanted a newspaper. Well, I remember that...
you said I was crazy.
Yes, I said, you've lost your mind, Greg Everett. Do you know how much work this is? And so we talked about it, and I thought about it, and you had the Fox affiliate here in Myrtle Beach.
The station here.
And I knew that you could combine some of the expenses.
We tried.
You were local. And what I'd always wanted for the Myrtle Beach Herald was for it to be an integral part of the community.
Oh, yeah.
I knew you could do that. And I'm so proud to say that the end of the story is that you have done that.
Oh, yeah.
So many charities have benefited from the Myrtle Beach Herald and what you have done. into the Heart Association, the Cancer, just so many associations, and I'm very thankful for that, Greg.
Well,
for taking care of the village health.
Well, it's been your baby for 15 years. Of course, it's been my baby just for 4 years. I mean, you've watched it to grow even without having your hands in the till. Being active on monitoring expenses and monitoring staff. It's a tough thing. But of course, I quote you almost on a weekly basis.
Oh dear.
I don't know if I give you attribution for it, but I say on a weekly basis something you told me there at Chick-fil-A, which was, every week comes very fast.
Every week is fast. Whether you're ready for it or not, whether you have the funds for it or not, it comes every week, and you're obligated, and it has to go out. You don't realize, but a newspaper is very complicated. It's like 5 businesses wrapped into one. You've got to have a distribution company. You've got to have a printing company. You've got to have writers. You've basically got to do this. You've got to write a book every week. You've got to do the research, write it, lay it out, print it, and distribute it.
And sell it. Make sure you've got advertisers that are committed to making sure both that their businesses want to grow, but at the same time to make sure a community newspaper grows in tandem. And in the area, we've got some tremendous community newspapers. We think about Polly Lohman, who I know you've worked with in the past, who launched that by herself, much like you, back in 1971. We think of Steve Robertson and his bride there in Conway, with the Owry Independent, and folks all over down in Pawleys Island.
And if you notice, the weekly newspapers continue to be owned in this area by locals.
Right. Very definitely.
Which is a good thing.
The Laura Scene over there that Ricky Hardy and his wife had launched and grew and then later sold to Steve Robertson. So they've remained in local hands. And hopefully we'll continue that focus for years to come. You know, right up the street in Brunswick County, that was sold out to a big group out of Virginia. It had been locally owned, and you'll see continuously.
Changes.
That's right. The Marion paper was sold to a group out of Canada years ago, and of course now is owned by Media General, so out of Virginia. So you don't always see that impact of locals.
You know, one of the best compliments I think I'd ever received was a gentleman who would read the newspaper, and I know that you've heard this also. He said, "I live by myself. There's nobody here to talk to in the mornings. I have a cup of coffee, and I'll read the Myrtle Beach Herald when it comes, and I feel like somebody's been to visit me. I've had a talk with a friend after I get through reading a newspaper." I thought, well, that's where we wanted to be. That's good. I was looking at this story in the newspaper, and I wish everybody could see. I got to talk to all the interesting people. It gave me such an excuse. Justin Plyler Sr. I remember walking into his office at the Gay Dolphin. He started the Gay Dolphin down Ocean Boulevard. His office was like a museum. Papers were stacked this high. Underneath, they'd been there for about 50 years. And he had the original minutes from the Chamber of Commerce laying on his desk, just shuffled over to the side. He had the audit from the city of Myrtle Beach originally, you know, just over here in the corner. Things you would see in a museum, just shuffled around his office.
And the store is like a museum, the Gay Dolphin, right.
But
of course, his son, Buzz, is doing a great job continuing that tradition and his parents' legacy there.
And, of course, we got the treat of the bikers.
Even focusing on bikers back then, 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, we had some of the first
15 years ago,
first bike weeks, and so many stories in here. You know, when I thumbed through, I'm anxious actually to go back through and see so many of them.
We need to get you into the Herald sometime, and of course the line right up there at the top, the subtitle. Debbie, share with viewers what we're seeing here.
The weekend weather was cold, but Myrtle Beach was hot. And
Absolutely.
It was hot because it was one of our motorcycle weekends, and it was a time when we had the one percenters or the Hells Angels and the other bikers coming in. And so we had to get used to them, and they had to get used to us.
Sure.
So it was
this piece
interesting times.
Right under the headline, just a little more local, which of course we still have right over the door as folks come in. I think I actually locked up that line, and we use now morelocal.com as one of the vehicles thanks to that little line. I think I locked up a little more local.
Well, the Sun News helped us with that. The daily newspaper helped us with that because they kept saying, well, we're the local newspaper. And I said, well, we're just a little more local.
I never knew where that came from. Good. Just having you here again. Of course, a lot of viewers want to know, Debbie, what prompted you to actually launch the Herald? What was it about, for instance, the daily newspaper? What was it about the folks who were promoting themselves to the local newspaper that just wasn't local enough?
I was staying at home. I was married, living over at Plantation Point, and I'd always worked, and I love working. I just love getting out and going to the office. I just love working. I like to play hard, and I like to work hard.
Yeah, listen to that. Let's say it again on the eve of Valentine's. That's right. I like to play hard and work hard. Right.
And so I thought, gee, I need to do something. Yeah. But my husband wanted me to go with him when he wanted to go places, and I thought, what can I do? And I thought, I've worked at a number of newspapers, and I knew the newspaper business. Well, it had to be something that I knew about.
Yeah.
We had no weekly newspaper in Myrtle Beach. So I thought, well, I think I'll start a newspaper. So I sat down and I sketched out a business plan pretty quickly.
Right.
And then I told my husband, and he said, what?
Are you on what drug? Yeah. Hello.
And so it was...
But he bought in.
He bought in. Actually, he literally bought in because... he actually had a car dealership, so I was selling him advertising.
I saw some of his ads in there, sure. But then I saw a lot of other car dealers, Grand Strand Nissan and Bob Bible.
We did. We had a lot of car dealers, and during that time, they weren't using a lot of the ad agencies, so it was quite a time-consuming thing to put the car ads together. And put them in the newspaper. Thank goodness now they all get ad agencies just about to put
almost
their ads together.
Exactly
but it was like, run out here and take a picture of this car we just got for sale.
Oh yeah. Look at that, Lisa Givens at home in Myrtle Beach. Yeah. Of course, seeing her there, first quarter local housing sales hitting the roof.
It was. That was during
June of '94.
We saw a number of different trends here in Myrtle Beach, and we could see it coming. We thought, here comes another building boom.
Right.
And it was real easy to see as we were getting to it. And I remember the Broadway at the beach. When we would ride by Broadway at the beach, it was just pines and pine trees. That's all it was over there. We couldn't imagine having stores over there. So we knew there was another boom coming.
Right.
And it's pretty easy at a newspaper because you have a lot of people calling you. You keep up with all the government meetings, that type of thing. So, and which was one of the things that kept us busy with the politicians.
It is tremendous seeing their commitment of really keeping community newspapers
up to date. Oh, they would come by on Tuesday nights after council meeting to give us the real scoop of what went on. So it was a fun time building.
Yes. Now, of course, you were both, Frank Barnhill was writing.
Yes, he was.
And you wrote Publisher's Puff. Did you write other things or behind the scenes? Were you helping to rewrite a good bit?
It was a newspaper that everybody did everything. And that's what I told them in the very beginning, that the salespeople, I know you sell, but also you have a social life. You have a life where you go to other events, take your camera, bring those pictures in. That way we've expanded our staff. Don't get off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Taking these hints. I need to be thinking that way. I should have talked to you more about that over the last 4 years. That's a great point. Yeah.
If you're in the, you're part of the newspaper and the newspaper family. So they took their cameras to whatever they went to. And we thought the more people that we can show in the newspaper, if there are pictures in the newspaper, then maybe they would pick up the newspaper another time.
Absolutely.
To see who else's pictures
thinking.
on.
Yes.
Every week we went out and did an Own Your Mind. We asked them a question.
Right.
That was, let's see, Myrtle Beach City Council has recently discussed but has not voted on a proposal to open up the municipal golf course to hotel golf passages. Talking about Whispering Pines. And we'd go out and we'd find a few golfers, ask their opinion. And they weren't always local people because we wanted to know what the tourists were thinking.
I see that, yes, absolutely. Some local and some from out of town. And that's a good question. And, of course, it's even something they think about to today. Should Whispering Pines maintain its heavy orientation towards locals, or should they think about the hotel, motel, tourist business as well?
Yes, and so it just... I see history here, and I'm just amazed.
Oh, look at this. This is actually, Sonny Clarity, who owns Reflections here, is related to Harold Clarity here on the front page.
Oh, Harold was part of Chapin's, and Chapin's, when the newspaper was started, was still delivering groceries to people's homes.
We'll have to tell Sonny that, who was with us earlier to open this morning, that his relative Harold is here on the front page of the June 1994 Myrtle Beach Herald.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that when I started the newspaper, first thing I did, I went to the library, and I went back through the microfiche of all the newspapers that had been in Myrtle Beach forever, and the beginnings of the Sun News. I looked to see what things they had then, and I didn't see the same newspaper that I was seeing back in 1994. And I really took some of their ideas they had in the very beginning because I thought I wanted to bring it back to a local flavor.
Sure. And of course it was. And over time, unfortunately, they've had to grow. I mean, fortunately, they've had to grow, but unfortunately, they've had to grow into Brunswick and into Georgetown County. So now as a 3-county market, it's very difficult to not only, I mean, when we think about hyper-local papers like the Coastal Observer or Polly, the North Myrtle Beach Times, or the Loris paper, where they're really just focused. If you look at our masthead now, of course, we've got Garden City, Murrells Inlet, Sockasty, Surfside Beach, and Myrtle Beach. We've got those 5. To be hyper-local, even serving those 5 is tough enough. Look at Teddy Henry there.
Teddy Henry, Mickey Spillane. We found the most colorful people we could find at the beach, and we went to interview them. I mean, Mickey Spillane was a real treat. We had some history. We were, I was out on a movie set at Sandy Island, and when we came back in, the stunt people were on the same boat that I was in when we came into the marina, and Mickey Spillane was sitting there. And he looked at the stunt man, and the stuntman looked at him. He looked at the stuntman looked at him. And so I introduced the two. And they knew right away while they were looking at each other, and I couldn't figure out why. The stuntman had actually been the book cover for Mickey Spillane's book in Sweden.
No.
And because he was Swedish.
Right.
And so, anyhow, so I said, let's do a story. And so we did a story featuring Mickey Spillane after that, the murder mystery writer who lived here along the Grand Strand.
Yeah. Golly, Debbie, it's got to be exciting for you. Of course, to see the page count growing. I mean, you were jumping up. When you think about going from 8 pages to 10 pages, that's a substantial jump. And when you go from 10 to 12, I mean, these are big jumps with a paper. Having to add that on, of course, a lot of that's driven by your advertising growth.
It is, and that was very hard to convince the public or to explain to them why it is that you can't have all the stories that you want to have. It had to be based on advertising. We had to be able to pay for that page. You know, if we had enough advertising, we could run more stories.
Right, sure.
You know, so it was very hard to convey that to the public because they were our friends. You know, these people reading the newspaper were our friends. We gave away 13,000 copies every week for 15 months.
13,000 copies
13,000 copies every week for around 15 months.
Well, you really did need to have advertising to help grow that, and that's...
And if I had not had friends, we would not have been able to distribute them because it was in everybody's car, and everybody was assigned to go to Northside Pharmacy and put a load there and take them to the different clubs and take them to different places.
I've heard some of those stories. Who is that? Don was telling me that he and Sally were making lots of runs. Shar, maybe even early on.
Everybody made runs. Sure. It was pretty much an effort of the community.
Again, a full-page ad from Grand Strand Nissan. Now, of course, you mentioned about Mr. Johnson. Was he involved in Grand Strand Nissan?
No.
So you really had these folks stepping out of the gate early on.
Right.
Bob Bible to buy full-page ads to really wrap around. And, of course, oftentimes folks think it's just about the community or we're just helping a community newspaper. It's not that. They can't just spend thousands of dollars with you just because you're locally owned. They spend it because obviously folks come in, they've seen it, that repetition every week of seeing that happen.
And what we found actually when we went in to find out who our readers were, our readers were a little more educated than the average reader.
Right.
They were the market that was the working market, and they were the people who purchased.
Oh, yeah.
And so that helped us in selling advertising in the very beginning.
Shoppers, not shoplifters. Yeah. Someone said that the other day, which is a great point. Making sure, I mean, it's very important to make sure you're bringing in, you're reaching the right crowd there.
Absolutely. And this was one of the City Police Roundup was one of my favorites for years.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a favorite of everybody's. We got a little silly sometimes, but we took actual police reports and then we kind of made fun of them.
Absolutely. And you made fun of them. That's a great idea.
It was a humorous column.
That could get.
We left out the names.
Who did that for you, Debbie? You're not going to tell. Yeah.
No, we all had to take turns because that was pretty time-consuming to go through the police reports and all. But during that time, it was a lot of fun, and they helped us with it.
Absolutely. I bet they did. Behind the scenes,
behind
quietly.
the scenes. We had a lot of help behind the scenes.
I hate to say it, Debbie. We've run out of time. Would you be willing to come back and be with us tomorrow
on Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
I would love to come and be your sweetheart on Valentine's Day.
I love it, Debbie. That's great news. We'll tell David, and of course, we want to hear more about the next 14 years of the Herald. We'll highlight that a little bit tomorrow.
Okay. Well, hope everybody will tune in tomorrow then.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with the founder of the Myrtle Beach Herald, Debbie Harwell, coming up next. There's more to Debbie than just the Myrtle Beach Herald. Come back tomorrow to hear a little bit about her public relations company, of course, about her tremendous son Mike and her 3 grandchildren. Of course, the real opportunity to highlight Shagging with the Stars and Debbie's tremendous performance recently. Valentine's Day is tomorrow, part 2 of Debbie Harwell. Come on back.